Okay. All right, everyone, welcome. I know we had a lot of people who were out of town or otherwise going to be gone, and we're going to try to connect. So we'll see how many people we can assemble online. We've got pretty good group here. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes that I sent around? AI generated? I mean,
You said editing on it. How much did you edit?
Probably about a half hour,
Okay.
moving things around and clearing things up, but it was like, oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
So it was, I thought it was really helpful. So I'm gonna go ahead and just, I've got a Zoom going. We've also got the Teams meeting going. And with that, we'll try to make sure that I can send those around for the people who couldn't be here. I think I'm a couple of meetings behind on upload. Had some technical difficulty with that, changing over system computers. But so welcome everyone. We're gonna dig right in here in a few minutes on the JIT information, but before that, we just want to get some updates. So Councilwoman, if you want to provide any updates from D5.
Hi, everybody. I apologize that I am not there in person. Owen is there in person on behalf of us. It's varsity tryouts for soccer for George. And so I have to do a pickup. So you're going to see me get on my phone in a hot second. But anyway, I apologize for not being there in person. I hope you are all doing well. Really excited to talk about the JID conversation, but that is not the only thing going on down in our council office. So last week we had 2 hearings on items that I've been working on. So Councilmember Watson and I rewrote the entire elections code from scratch, including the Fair Elections Fund, which was very needed. And so really excited that as we look towards 2027 municipal elections, they're going to be easier to understand, easier to read, better run in terms of the Fair Elections Fund, in terms of things like debates. They're going to be ADA accessible, all those different kinds of things. So super excited about that. And then we also had a hearing for the gas stations proposal that council members Cashman and Romero Campbell and I have been working on together. So really excited about that. It was approved by City Council. So from here on out, gas stations in Denver will be required to be there needs to be 1,000-foot buffer between existing gas stations. There has to be, or a quarter-mile buffer between light rail station and a gas station, and then 300 feet from essentially low residential. We call them protected districts, but it's everything row home and below. So that we think will be a better use of our land, particularly along our transit corridors. And so hopefully we'll be able to get some housing and some mixed use development along those corridors with some small businesses and things like that. So those are really exciting things. We are also working right now on our vacancy blight ordinance. So you may have read an article, maybe about a year ago about Lakewood. They updated their entire kind of nuisance ordinance to deal with problem properties and instituted a fine structure for to pay for the time and energy that our first responders spend on our vacant and derelict properties that we know are in general not maintained, not boarded up. They are very attractive to criminal activity. You all know this. I'm preaching to the choir. This is Peepers Optical. This is, this is that church at 50 South Colorado. This is that hotel on the corner of Colfax and Colorado Boulevard, all those different kinds of places. So we're working on a kind of a new scheme for that. And we think that that will make a significant difference in terms of community safety and also in terms of quality of life of our residents and utilizing the properties that we have that are at the moment just sort of sitting vacant. So really excited about some of the things that we're doing. There's lots more going on down at the city. I'm sure you've heard the mayor's office has announced that they would like to send a new bond package to the voters. This is something we do about every 10 years. We sent out an email from our office Monday, I think, that says, you know, if you're interested in sitting on a committee, please let us know. We are happy to nominate you. No guarantees that we'll be able to get you on, but please, if you are interested in that, Owen can send you the information again if you didn't get that email from us. But we would love to have our voices heard. We historically have been left out of a number of the bonds. There has been investment, but not major investment, and it's time for some major investment in District 5. So would love your help in advocating for that so that we get some of these big projects on the bonds. And if there are bond projects that you would like to see, please let us know as well. We have a list. We've posted it on our social media for you guys to take a look at. It will be in our newsletter, but we would like to add to it. So let us know what projects you would like to see on that bond. In general, they need to be shovel ready. But we have a lot of shovel ready projects that we know we can get right into in District 5. So thanks, guys.
Quick question, Councilwoman. What about when we finished Denver Moves Cherry Creek? We had a number of things that we thought were actually on deck to be funded. Do you know what's being funded so that we can kind of backfill with the requests for the other things in the bond?
Yeah, it's a great question that I can't answer right now due to the fact that we don't know what's going on with the federal government. So we don't know what is going to be funded and what isn't going to be funded. We don't know what we think is already funded that the funding is going to disappear from. The information is changing day by day at this point, and so unfortunately, we don't know what is already funded. I suspect that things that are on the priority list to be funded are going to remain on the priority list to be funded, but probably not actually be funded.
Thanks. Okay, I don't see anyone from Paul Cashman's district, so we'll move over to an update on the bid.
Okay.
And maybe even the chamber, since we've got covered.
Great. So for the bid, a lot going on. It's just kind of starting out our summer, spring and summer events are coming up. So we have St. Patrick's at the Jacquard Hotel rooftop on Saturday, March 15th. We're going to have some music from the Colorado Emerald Society, the Drum and Bagpipe Corps, local firefighters and police officers. So be a great event to come down and see. We have a contra series on Fillmore this year. So that's going to be Throwback Thursdays. It's going to be in June, July, and August and September from 4 to 9 on Thursdays. So we will get the information out to everybody. It'll be on our website. Smash Fine Arts Festival is coming up. They have a June and August festival this year on Fillmore Plaza. Of course, Cherry Creek Arts Festival will be returning. We're going to do a Bastille Day, a French Fest this year, July 12th and 13th on Fillmore Plaza. We will have our sidewalk sale July 17th and 20th. Then we will host 5280's Top of the Town again on July 17th. We're in the works right now. We're doing a Cherry Creek Toberfest. So doing something for Oktoberfest with a little Cherry Creek zing on it. Some new retail, HW Home has returned, Townhouse has moved in, Saltwater Social and Lake Colonial just opened on the restaurant side. Organic Squeeze has opened down on Steel. Plus Terry Garbarini has moved from Detroit over to the new building at 320 Fillmore. So stop in and see her store. It's a beautiful new store. So that's kind of it from a marketing perspective. On the operations side, just going to contract with our landscaper for an additional 2 years. We feel we've made a lot of progress with them. We did plant 40,000 bulbs that will be coming up this spring. So we expect the neighborhood to look absolutely beautiful and stunning. We're going to continue on with some landscape enhancements this year. And then we're going to be also hiring a new public safety director for the district. We're down to a final few candidates. We should have a decision next week, and we'll have a full-time public safety director working for the bid. So that's going to be a big, I think, bonus to our organization that we have somebody that solely focuses on the public safety of the neighborhood. Development is hot and heavy and going to get busier. So we'll have a lot to manage with impacts to the right of way, et cetera. I'm sure everybody's seen 209 Fillmore. The buildings have been torn down. They're getting ready to go into excavation. That'll be 2 levels of underground excavation for parking, and that apartment building will be going up. Everybody knows the giant hole at 201 Fillmore. Progress is being made on that. The Waldorf Astoria site, that should be going partially under demolition here really soon. They're just waiting on some permits. They'll demolish the 2 buildings on the south side so they can build a new alley. Once that new alley is built, they'll dedicate that to the city, vacate the existing alley, and then move on with demolition of the other buildings. They do expect to have a pause once they do that first bit of demolition for about 6 to 8 months. Let's see, 255 Milwaukee, the office building, possibly 90 days out on that project starting. More to come is not solid there, but that's our most recent update. We're seeing 215 Detroit in design review again. So that project, that's the apartment building on Detroit, is back moving forward, and they're trying to get some things accomplished there to have a go on that project. We recently saw the Cherry Cricket building again in design review. So they were talking about, we have some electrical transformers to move and some questions and just some zoning issues on moving some transformers. And Cherry Cricket will be staying, so don't worry, it'll be from behind the Cherry Cricket back through Forget Me Not. And then Cherry Lane is kicking off, which is the old Clayton Lane property, and that is starting in March. So nothing going on in the construction world, as you can see. So we will be pretty busy with a lot of construction going on. We're looking at making sure we have at least a sidewalk open on one side of the street for our north-south streets and our east-west streets. I would say if you guys start to see those impacts in the neighborhood with parking or things you have concerns with, pick up the phone and call me. I want to get in front of those issues as they pop up instead of let them spiral out of control. So any observations you guys have or questions or concerns, reach out and we will work with the general contractors to make sure that they're playing by the rules and doing a good job of being good partners with the neighborhood.
Do you have parking plans for all of those projects filed yet?
Every project that we've had a pre-con with has a parking plan filed. Most of them, we haven't gone to full pre-con with the city, so we're meeting with them. We've done preliminary meetings with them, but until we do our official pre-construction meeting with Doty and us, that's where those plans get filed with us.
And are those plans, can you make those available to the neighborhoods?
Let me check with the Doty guys. I'm sure that it probably won't be an issue.
It's public. I
Yeah.
can find them, but it takes a long time. It's
Yeah.
easier just to,
Yeah.
if you can link them to me, I can share them to people who have concerns or at least make people aware that there is a plan.
Yeah,
And I think that just gives people some comfort.
absolutely. Yeah, we can do that. And they're all required to provide parking out of the public right of way. So
When do you get the results of Walker study?
that's an ongoing thing with us. We've had quite a few results and we've gone down the path of them. It's really us going to our board and deciding what mobility options we want to move on. We're continuing to look right now, we're going to be digging really deep into right-of-way signage packages to get people into garages. Right now, the reality is folks have no idea where to park in this district. And with the new construction and the off-alley underground garages, it's even more confusing. So we're pathing out that. We're pathing out some other parking options with them. We're just going under contract with Transportation Solutions to do a better study on our employees, really trying to figure out where our employees are coming from, what mobility needs they have. So we're going to be working with Stuart to do a full study with all of our employees. Once we get those results, that can really drive some decision making on how we can hopefully address and help those service sector workers find parking. So a lot going on in mobility. There's going to be some big, there'll probably be some big investments coming down the pipe with that.
Can you provide a quick update on the low curb QI patio?
Oh, yeah.
When
So
is that going to, is it it's not a hearing, right?
we're not sure. So Quality Italian did submit to bring a expanded patio back out in the public right of way. We did have some input on that. And from our perspective on the bid, is all I can really report to is that we did not approve it. There were some concerns with the design that impacted the bid. So we sent back a no from our perspective on it, that they needed to address some access issues and blocking off some infrastructure that we had concerns with. The gist of their plan, though, does meet the requirements of the city for the outdoor places program. So it will be smaller. It is offset from the property line. They do have the requirements in to meet what the city needs to see. They just have some infrastructure issues that are blocking off things that we need access to. So that's why we did it.
Meredith?
Richard, I know that I have sent a letter to you and Nick and copied Hillary, who's the head of the library, about what's going on at the southwest corner of Milwaukee. I mean, I've been there several times, and literally you wonder if the building is falling down, just because you know that they've had structural problems, and so they have plans. I hope somebody's following up on it. I know that Hillary sent a letter the other day saying how, you know, that it was really bad. And so they do have existing plans and I mean, test results. I hope that the library is not being structurally impacted. And I mean, this is the same group that put that water line across the street, and I watched a car lose their front bumper. I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but it's a real concern for the preservation for the library, let alone uncomfortable getting through the district. And I know that they're going to be doing a bro project. And so I'm just hoping that you guys can kind of tell them that this is an issue or remind them. But Councilwoman Sawyer has been copied on it as well.
Yeah, Meredith, so, you know, so specific to the water line, we requested it move underground and that's been moved underground. So that bump is no longer there. The city backed us on that and required them to move it underground. As far as the demolition, they're wrapping up the major part of the demo and they'll go into digging and excavation. I did speak with Hillary on Saturday. We're at an event together and it seems like things have slowed down as far as the impact on the building and just the shaking. I mean, without a doubt, when a building's coming down, there are vibrations and a building is getting demolished. You know, the library is deemed to be structurally sound according to the city. They opened it back up. But I think we'll see that kind of that piece of the project is finishing up and wrapping up. So it should be much less impactful moving forward.
Well, they're also going to be doing a bro project, and they just seem to not, you know, they just kind of move forward. And so hopefully the bro project will have less of an impact
Where's the bro
on
project?
that area.
Yeah, bros on Clayton.
Yeah, the bro project is over
It's
on
on
Clayton.
Clayton. Yeah.
I don't know. I met the guy he just told me that, you know, they're going to be the general contractor on his project. He had lunch with them and was, you know, he was concerned about the water, that it was back then with the water thing. And so, but it just seemed, I'm just hoping that we haven't had any problems with the library. I mean, it was structurally sound before they started. Now I hope the library is still structurally sound and, you know, whatever, you've heard what I've shared. Thank you.
Kyle, do you want to just say a few words about how it's going now? Then
Oh,
that you've got the, oh,
Yeah,
I'm
before we
sorry,
go, Councilwoman.
Councilwoman. I didn't see her hand up. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I wanted to just respond to the topic we were talking about earlier with regards to the QI outdoor patio request. So wanted to let you guys know my office also recommended denial of it. It does fit within the confines and specifics that are required by the city now for below curb patios. But we denied it on the purpose that there's no indication in their plans anywhere of how that is going to enhance community safety, given that we have had such significant problems with that structure in the past. And granted that structure was bigger in the past, but we need to see more about how exactly that patio is going to work and whether it is going to continue to be, you know, like hit by cars and cause accidents and all the things that happened before we're willing to approve it as well. So just wanted to flag for you that we also sent a recommendation of denial for that. Thanks.
Councilwoman, thank you for doing that. I know it's been a concern for many people in the neighborhood. So if you're able to send a copy of your communication to us or to me, and then I'll make sure that Cherry Creek North knows the
We can't.
position. We can't?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We can't. So there's an internal database. It's called Acela. And when an application gets filed for something like the QI building, we go into Acela and write it in Acela. So it's actually in the record of the permit application. So that's where it's
Okay.
located. It's not like we didn't send a letter or an email or anything like that. It's actually in the application.
But that is publicly accessible, correct? If you go in and look at the permit application?
That's a good question. I don't know. Owen, do you know whether the public can see that?
I think they can after it's submitted and done after the review period, but I can log in and try to find my comment that we wrote.
Yeah, even if you could screenshot it, that would be great.
Yeah.
And just to send it, that'd be great.
Yeah. I think that we'd like to back both of these concerns, maybe on behalf of Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association. So, because so many people complained about that in the past. So it's just, we don't have that portal. We don't have the right to get into that portal, I don't think. But I'm not sure. So I'll work with Owen on that in the next couple of days.
Yep.
And we'll try to submit something as well. Anybody else have questions about QI or comments or anything like that? So, okay,
Yeah,
Kyle, please
sure,
tell
sure.
us how it's going.
So far, so good. I haven't met everybody. I've met a handful of you over the years, and I've known a few of you for a long time. But so I'm Kyle Chisholm. I'm running the Cherry Creek Chamber now. So I'm on month 2, just getting started. My background is I'm deeply rooted here. Of 4 generations in the same house on the same block, that sort of thing. I've worked in Cherry Creek for a long time and was doing external affairs for a construction company around the country. And took this job, and right now I'm kind of in that listening mode. I'm a big believer of listen before you act, try to get the lay of the land, that sort of thing, understand what's important to folks. It's been interesting. I've learned a ton, but getting up to speed. I've been, a lot of you may already be on get our newsletters. There's opportunities I got surveys out there. I want to hear what you all are thinking. But it's interesting. My predecessor, Christine, whom you all know and love, I mean, had been there for so long, so all of it was in her head. She knew exactly who everybody was. So I'm still trying to get there. But the moral of the story is my door is wide open. If you want my contact information, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get to know all of you and learn what I can and see how we can make the chamber as beneficial to not only the business community, which is normally what you think of with the chamber, but that ties to the community itself and that connectivity. So, yeah.
Really appreciate that. Cherry Creek North is a member of the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So RNOs, anybody can become members of the chamber. So,
absolutely, yeah.
and you have some really good events. And so I think we're trying very hard at the RNO level and the community level to really strengthen the ties between the community and the businesses, especially right now when it's almost like COVID again. You have these businesses that are terribly impacted by the construction and people saying, oh, I don't want to go down into Cherry Creek. It's really important to support our businesses. So,
Amen.
We're trying to get the word out, even order online and do a pickup or whatever, if it's too difficult to get around some of these areas. But, there are some of those shops that have Gabarini's, just taking a lot of space right now. And anyway, so we need to get out and really support the businesses and so just
appreciate that. I totally agree. Speaking of Garbarini's, my great grandparents' house, where Garbarini's was on Detroit, that's where my great grandparents lived. Right there.
That's
I have pictures of the house that was right where the front doors of Garbarini's was. I should bring that back up.
A quick note, Gary Jackson, who spoke at the January meeting about the Black History Month events and the fact that outside of Five Points, Cherry Creek had the large Black population. And there was an event on Saturday. It sold out. It was free, but tickets were all taken pretty far in advance. And so we're trying to get that redone, have the panel come and talk about it in Cherry Creek. So we'll let you know. I think we're also trying to get some things up on the website so people can kind of engage in that. And it's just a really good thing for Black History Month to just remember the very deep Black history of this neighborhood. So, and I think we're going to work, Richard was there on Saturday too. We're going to work on trying to do something to acknowledge that as a part of this neighborhood. So, so stay tuned on that. And with that, if there are no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, who is here to give us our update on Cherry Creek West. So
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you for being here again.
Of course. So we, got rezoned last year, and since then we have been designing the buildings. So moved into concept design on the first phase, which is the eastern half of the site closest to Nordstrom, and wrapped that up in January. So we're now into schematic design, which is great. And then also we have started taking asbestos out of the existing buildings. So we'll be doing that for the next several months. We're looking forward to starting demolition on the old Elways building, as well as the old Boulder Running Company building in the fall of this year.
So great. Any questions?
I have read that you're gonna do 2 stories of underground parking
Correct.
in phases.
Right. We're doing the project in 2 phases, the eastern half first, followed by the western half.
So the eastern phase of the underground parking excavation will
Mhm.
go forward in the fall. Is that-
In the fall, we'll start demolition on the existing buildings that are on that eastern half of the site. We'll keep the Bed Bath and Beyond for a couple years, just as a construction office. And for staging, we may buy some materials in advance. Sorry, you were asking about demolitions. That will take 6 to 7 months just to tear down those buildings and take out the basements. And after that, and after we have all of our permits from the city, then we'll move into garage excavation.
It's kind of hard to do garage excavation in phases.
We'll just do the eastern half and then have a knockout wall that will be in place until we move over to the western half. Good question.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody from the cheap seats over there? Okay. All right, thank you again for that update. Okay, so now I think we're going to go ahead and move over to our discussion on the JID. So Jamie and Councilwoman, if you could please take over. And are you screen sharing again this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will be. Yep, we'll get it pulled up.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. You had an opportunity to meet Jamie Gillis, our consultant, last time. And so we've got kind of an updated PowerPoint presentation to just go through kind of the work we've been doing over the course of the last month, and kind of refresh you on some of the concepts that we talked about last time. And most importantly, an updated map that you guys can see, because we know we're all map nerds and it's very helpful to actually visually see what's going on. So really appreciate your time. Jamie, take it away.
Thank you. Can everybody see the screen, the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, to Councilwoman's point, some of these slides you will have seen before, but we just thought it was good to kind of keep building on information presented. So just to kick us off, I know as we've started to have conversations with different stakeholders, it's really important to talk about what prompted the exploration of a JID and what has led to this point. As you all are very well aware, there have been a number of plans outlining a number of improvements, enhancements to the neighborhood. And then in the last few years, the Councilwoman's office has conducted a community needs survey, and in May of 2024 last year, completed a needs assessment that looks at what the next steps are and aligns a lot of the things that came out of the survey with things that have been identified in previous planning efforts and things that may or may not be funded by the city. And if not to be funded by the city, what kind of tool or mechanism might be appropriate to explore to fund some of these other things that the community has said they would like to see. And so in that final Cherry Creek needs assessment, there was a recommendation to advance exploration of a dedicated funding stream that could address some of the needs identified, and in particular, looking at a special district. A number of things have been looked at. I know the councilwoman has repeated this statistic before in terms of just some of the overall data of the neighborhood in terms of where it stands in regards to sales tax collections. And obviously that being a key element in terms of making an argument for city investment. But we also know that there have been challenges based upon the city's priorities around equitable investment related to how, when, and where investment might occur in Cherry Creek. So the community needs survey that was conducted in early 2024 provided a lot of great information. Over 1,000 responses were collected from residents and patrons and identified some of the positives in the neighborhood, including feeling safe in the daytime in the parks and playgrounds and an overall sense of cleanliness in the neighborhood, but also identifying some issues such as feeling unsafe with the traffic and pedestrian safety, safety walking home at night, just safety in general as an observation. And then also inquired as to areas where improvements were desired in terms of prioritizing where funding might be invested for improvements. So you can see on the right-hand side there, the ideas that were suggested and their level of support. And you have, again, safety emerging in the top two, improved lighting in the residential areas and security services beyond police. You have enhanced street crossings, improvements to the greenway, microtransit, and then other beautification efforts, landscaping, public art, and again, access opportunities appearing as a priority. So the assessment that was completed after the survey was done and after looking at a number of factors and reviewing all the plan documents were just presented a few key findings that obviously there's intense amounts of development, as we've heard at the earlier part of this meeting, that are placing strains on the community. There's infrastructure needs. There's challenges with getting funding from the city that continue to increase with the federal situation and a lot of unknowns for the city who relies on federal funding to do a lot of things. And so again, the report recommending that based on survey findings, looking at a dedicated revenue stream that could possibly leverage or take into account funding for services that would be above and beyond what city typically funds in a neighborhood is something that should be explored. So I present all that just to say all of this is information that I've been reviewing as I've gotten up to speed on where things are, starting this process back in the end of December. And we're building on a lot of things that have been consistently repeated over and over in a lot of plans and surveys that have been done in the community. So, my experience and background, my company, Centro, helps support neighborhoods and downtowns and communities in the formation of special districts and aligning the formation of those districts to meet and address the needs of community. So we always start by coming in and looking at what's the most appropriate special district tool to meet the needs that have been identified. And there are a variety of special district tools, which I'm sure you've heard of: metro districts, downtown development authorities, urban renewal authorities. All of them have a unique purpose and intent. The two most commonly used neighborhood district funding tools in Colorado are a business improvement district, which you know well from Cherry Creek North, and then a general improvement district. And these two tools are very similar, but they have really one significant difference, and that is in who is assessed. So in a business improvement district, only commercial properties are assessed. In a general improvement district, commercial and residential properties are assessed. And so when you're looking at a neighborhood like Cherry Creek, the ability to tap into not only the ability to assess residential, but the ability to involve and give residential voices, give residents a voice in the delivery of the special district projects, becomes the better tool for residential and or mixed use neighborhoods. It also means that residents participate alongside commercial owners in the formation of the district. So in a bid, it's only commercial property owners and business owners. In a JID, it's commercial property owners, residential property owners, and residents who are registered to vote in the district who all participate in the formation. And we'll talk about the formation details in a couple of slides ahead. The formation process requires 3 steps, and I'll go into more detail on these in just a moment. But all districts, for the most part, require these same 3 steps. There's a petitioning process, there's a city council process with a public hearing and an ordinance that is passed, and then there's a Tabor ballot, which forms and allows for the taxation powers of the district. So the general improvement district is the selected district we have been looking at and talking about, that has been recommended in previous planning efforts. What is a general improvement district? Well, both bids and general improvement districts, or JIDs, are enabled by state statute. And so we follow state statute in the formation and the development of the planning process for JIDs. They're essentially quasi-governmental special districts. So once formed, they're at arm's length of the municipal government, and they allow for the ability, as many of you may know from all the great work that the bid does, the ability to enter into intergovernmental agreements and create special partnerships for service delivery in neighborhoods and districts. They are able to deliver special services in a defined area that are funded by an assessment on both residential and commercial properties in that area. And stakeholders in the formation of the JID establish the final boundaries, the priorities, the budget, and the work plan for the JID, among other things. JIDs, like bids, can fund a diversity of things, all of which are really aligned with what we've seen coming out of previous surveys and planning efforts and what we're hearing to date on some of the engagement we're doing. So safety, maintenance, cleaning, infrastructure, marketing, placemaking, transit and transportation are all things that are allowable expenses for a JID. And then once a JID is formed, again, the funds are managed by a board of those paying the assessments, a representative board of residents and commercial interests in the district that work together to deliver. Just some benefits of an improvement district. Again, much like the bid, when we see this in districts which have just proliferated, across the country and around the world in the last 20 years, but really the ability to just create a unified voice for a large area. Right now, we know Cherry Creek North also is broken into various districts and neighborhoods, and each have their own interest and need, but there is often power in the ability to work together collaboratively, identify big priorities and work towards those priorities. So districts do that. They provide governance and structure, and they provide reliable sources of revenue to enhance the vitality of an area. You can plan ahead for things. You can use those resources towards day-to-day programs and activities. You can invest in things and assets in the district. You can also bond against the revenues, and so do projects that are more expensive and pay them off over time. So all in all, it puts a lot of control of the district in your hands, and you get to decide how the district works and how it functions. And in doing so, then everybody in the neighborhood is paying their fair share to improve the area. And with those resources and that kind of quasi-governmental structure, really gives you a lot more ability to develop city partnerships and leverage other resources to be able to do things in the neighborhood. So currently there are 5 general improvement districts in Denver. This map shows 4. I don't have the updated city map yet because the newest district was just created, but you may be most familiar with the 14th Street General Improvement District, which funded a variety of enhancements, improvements on 14th Street, and maintains them. And then the Rhino General Improvement District, which was established in 2015, which really was developed around Brighton Boulevard, but has funded a lot of the beautification infrastructure and cleaning projects along Brighton, including the River North Park and the Riverfront Promenade, among other things. The most recently formed GID in Denver is the Ballpark Denver JID, located around Coors Field. That district was formed in November of 2024. Its baseline assessment budget is about 1.3 million. They're funding safety, security, homeless outreach, and cleaning. They're actually launching what they're calling their Ballpark Ambassador Team on March 5th. So when you go down to the Rockies games this spring, you'll see ambassadors out on the street doing cleaning, safety, and interacting with the unhoused population to get them to services, and also have set aside resources to do improved lighting, placemaking, branding, and beautification. So keep your eyes on that one. You'll probably see a lot about it in the news in the coming weeks as those services get off the ground for Ballpark. And then, of course, there are tons of bids as well around the neighborhood. And I only show this to share that, again, we increasingly see more and more districts being formed in neighborhoods where they recognize that having your own resources and revenue and organization allows you to get a lot more accomplished and develop more strategic relationships with the city in terms of how investment happens. So this is the new map Councilwoman mentioned. We continue to kind of work to refine our maps to tell the story of what we're looking at. All the properties in yellow are what we are calling our exploratory boundary or area. So this is our starting point for looking at what a GID might look like for the Cherry Creek Statistical Neighborhood. By no means is it the final determination on a boundary. We always start with an exploratory boundary. And throughout the process, of course, we're looking at priority areas for investment. We're looking at the edges of those boundaries to see if it makes sense to cross over on a street, all of that. So we will be having those conversations throughout the engagement process, but this is our starting point. And then I want to point out again that dark black boundary line that includes both the gold and purple properties, that's the Cherry Creek North bid. And so we are intending right now that the JID would overlay the bid, but would not double assess the commercial property. So the residential properties in the bid currently do not pay into the bid. And so the JID would capture assessments from that residential property and be able to enter into partnerships with the bid for service delivery there and throughout the entire neighborhood. Just a little bit more on the formation process. So there are 3 primary steps or phases that are part of the overall formation process in terms of how, as a consultant, I guide individuals and organizations, communities through the work. The first step is a feasibility study, and that's where you guys are right now. We are only under contract for a feasibility study at this phase. And that is how I typically do the work, which is to go into a neighborhood and spend 3 to 6 months, depending on the kind of size and complexity, putting together, gathering and understanding, I should say, of the needs of the district, looking at the data, looking at projects that are emerging as key priorities, pricing those projects, running assessment scenarios for how much could be generated at different rates, and what the pain tolerance is, if you will, for different levels of assessment. Engaging. We're going to talk about engagement here in a moment, but listening to all the different stakeholders to try to find common themes, common threads between what they think is critical and what, most importantly, they may be interested in paying for. And then putting together a framework for the JID and testing that support. All of that work in step 1 results in a feasibility report that basically says, here is where we see the sweet spot in terms of the possibility to carry this JID through successfully, how you price it, what services to focus on, all of that. and is fairly detailed, but also high level enough that we leave room in step 2 to dive into the real details. So assuming there's favorable support and we believe there's enough support to move forward, we move forward into step 2. That's development of the detailed operating plan, which is essentially a business plan for how the JID will operate, the services, the assessment, the budget, the governance, all of those things. And we vet that operating plan. Again, there's more engagement in step 2. So we start to drill down and work through the details and get to a point where we feel the community can support the plan that's being presented. And then at that point, that plan becomes the foundation for the petition. And a petition collection effort happens. Once petition thresholds are met, they're submitted to the city, and that city council process occurs. And we have to go through committee, a first reading, a second reading, and public hearing, and then council adopts an ordinance, allowing us to move forward into step 3, which is the Tabor election. And then the work that occurs there is to get electors designated, ballot request forms, all of that type of thing, and help to manage the special mail ballot election to the JID electors and inform people what the ballot question is all about. In terms of the engagement and what it looks like, particularly in phase 1, which is a feasibility study, we are doing a number of focus groups and one-on-one listening sessions. So we have targeted sessions by stakeholder type. Residents, neighborhood organizations, commercial property owners, businesses, all get a distinctive opportunity to weigh in. And we like to do it that way so we can listen to each different group and see where there are similarities or differences between different stakeholders within the neighborhood in terms of their desires and willingness to pay for various things. We, at some of our smaller sessions, like one-on-one or very small groups, we're listening, we're gathering feedback via conversation. But as we get into some of the larger listening sessions we're going to do over the next few months, we use a live surveying tool called Mentimeter that gathers feedback real time from stakeholders. And it's a great way just to test real time on the spot how people are feeling about the concept. Once we wrap up our focus groups and listening sessions, we'll take all that information and pour it into an online survey that will allow us to kind of retest support and ask people specifically what they're willing to pay for. And then those findings help us develop the feasibility study framework along with all the other data analysis we do. We put together a framework for the feasibility study, and then we'll do yet another round of engagement and feedback sessions to present the feasibility study back out to stakeholders and ask for feedback, input, and willingness to continue the conversation about the JID. And then that final feasibility study is completed and reported forward. And assuming, again, forward momentum, would recommend the next steps and kind of timeline to continue forward. All right, just a couple more slides and then I will stop and take questions. Who gets to participate in the formation process? So the participants in the formation are determined by state statute, and they're called electors. Electors are the individuals who can legally participate in the formation of a JID. Electors for a JID include owners of commercial property in the proposed district, owners of residential property within the proposed district, and residents who are registered to vote in the district. So a couple things I want to emphasize: only people that are within the final district boundary line that we draw participate in the petitioning and the election. This is not citywide. Second, I think it's important to note that while owners of both the commercial and residential property are critical to this process, residents who are registered to vote in the district but do not own also get to participate in the process. So people who lease apartments get a vote so long as they're registered to vote at the address within the district. What is the elector's role? For the petition, we obtain signatures, and we need either 200 signatures from one of the electors, or signatures from 30% of the total number of electors, whichever is less by statute. And that's a very confusing way to say 200 is the floor. But when we're talking about a district, looking at the current boundaries, that would be well over 6,000 electors. We would obviously aim to get much higher participation in the petition process to ensure we're demonstrating support when we go to council. And then for the tapered ballot, it's just a simple majority of ballots returned must vote in support. So even if 6,000 ballots go out, if only 400 come back and 201 vote yes, the district passes. It's important to note that if approved, the district becomes mandatory for all to pay, and that government and tax exempt organizations are not part of the elector base. They cannot be forced to pay, but they may contribute via what we call a pilot or a payment in lieu of taxes, which is something we will work on as part of the formation process, is any agreements that may need to occur to codify that. So key findings so far, I'm going to actually, oops, I feel like I lost a slide in here. I wanted to just share a little bit about who we have met with. So let me find that slide, and then I want to talk about key findings so far. We've had a number of meetings and have a number of meetings scheduled. So I'll just pull up that document, and then we'll talk about key findings and then go from there. So I'll zoom in on this just a little bit. In terms of meetings held, these are the meetings up here that have been held so far since we started this process. And then we have a lot of meetings that have been scheduled going forward. So as you can see, there's some of the larger property owners in there that are getting one-on-one meetings. We have some neighborhood association meetings, and we also have some general informational sessions that will be held starting in April. Well, we will be sending postcards to all the residents, all the businesses, et cetera, and inviting them to large open houses so that they can share their thoughts in that forum. And then one final thing I will just share is the kind of key findings to date. So just in terms of what we're hearing so far, again, we haven't had a ton of meetings, but most of it is just trying to understand what a JID can do, understanding the process. There's a lot of focus on making sure that that every voice is heard in this process, and making sure information gets out to everybody. So we're working really hard on that. Working to kind of develop a vision statement to unify folks around the why of a JID will be important, and that's something we'll develop as we go through. I would say generally we continue to hear that safety is a concern for all, and transit, both regional connectors, so transit that connects to downtown and adjacent areas, as well as an intra-neighborhood circulator type transit have emerged. And then in terms of what I would just call more special projects, I heard mention of the parking work today. So just support for the standardization of that and better messaging about parking and access throughout the area. Funding to realize the Greenway plan. And then, looking at things like key intersections around First and University, First and Steel. And I think there's also been some discussion here about what is the city's role in some of this? How long might it take the city to fund some of these? Is there a desire to try to accelerate things that the city could or should maybe fund, but given time constraints and a desire to make it happen more quickly, are stakeholders willing to fund some of those things? So as we get a little bit farther down the road, those are things we'll test in our focus groups and in our survey as well, just to kind of see what people's feelings are about that. So I will stop talking and would love to take any questions that you all have.
Brooks?
I have, Jamie, I have a question about the boundaries. So it looks like you're working with Cherry Creek statistical area boundaries. I'm concerned about two things. The Greenway plan and any improvements that, I'm glad David Steele's here, because we spent a lot of time on working on that Greenway plan some years ago, and I know the Business Alliance put money into it. We haven't seen anything from the city or Greenway folks. So my question really relates to the boundary. Should we include the creek in the boundary, even though there are no residents, but if the improvements are limited to what's within the boundary, I wouldn't want to cut the Greenway out of that. The other concern I have is about what we've always called the Cherry Creek Triangle, which is the area south of Alameda. I don't want that to become an orphan because it was part of the Cherry Creek area plan. And there are a lot of residents there, both ownership and rental. And that's a pretty big part, pretty big high density area. So, you know, to cut them out of it at this point and leave them as an orphan is a concern of mine. So those are the two things I had.
Great. No, that's great feedback. And again, as I said, we will circle back around and talk about that at our next internal meeting with the councilwoman. But the boundaries are fluid at this point. We always just pick a starting point and kind of work from there. So we can analyze both of those. And I will also say on things like the Greenway, you know, it's sort of if you're not pulling in any additional property, it's sort of neither here nor there if it's immediately adjacent to the boundary. The JID does allow, you know, statute says you can invest JID resources and amenities and assets that are immediately adjacent or critical to the functioning of the JID. But, you know, that's something we can look at. And certainly that other area, we can dive into that a little bit and see what we're talking about in terms of how many folks are there and maybe do a little special focus group there if it merits it. So thank you for calling that out, and it's noted on my part.
David, do you have any comments on
No, sorry, I don't.
Councilman, where is the south boundary of District 5? Is it,
So in this area, the south boundary of District 5 is the creek.
but in terms of, so it does include the triangle?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Right, that is actually technically Councilmember Cashman's district, I believe.
that?
That's
and
another reason to be concerned about that.
That's right. The reason for that is because because of the way precincts were drawn in the redistricting in 2023 that went into effect in 2023. But I do think, you know, I've talked a lot with Councilmember Cashman about this. He is you know, staying out of it for the most part, given that it's just a tiny area that he represents. But yeah, it is sort of it gets a little bit more difficult because that's not part of my area. So that's something to consider as well. But I do think it's a great flag. And, you know, Brooks, you're not the only one who's mentioned that. It's something we're considering. It's just we haven't started to include it in the boundaries yet, which is why on the map it is still just the Cherry Creek Statistical Neighborhood.
And there's not, to me, there's not, I mean, when you think about the kinds of improvements that we've all been talking about, like the pedestrian lighting that you and I worked on, Brooks, for years, trying to get that uniform and up and running and, you know, Cherry Creek East has more of that than anybody else. But it doesn't really go into the triangle in a way, because that's really a lot more commercial. But we can certainly talk about it. But I think that the thought was that it was really the statistical area, because there's much more uniformity in the neighborhoods. Cherry Creek East and Cherry Creek North are developed very, very similarly. And that really changes at Alameda. But, you know, it's a good point. We can think about it. But in my mind, how you get uniform improvements and how you get people to buy in really relates to, you know, what do they see as happening in the neighborhood? Because again, these kinds of improvements are things that, you know, the city doesn't do. But
Well, we've worked hard to bring the triangle in over the years.
yeah, it's just,
The plan, and they were fairly active for a while.
Now they're maxed out.
But now I mean, the way that it's developed, because you're right, I mean, I worked on that with the group when I was on the Cherry Creek East board, but the way that it's actually developed out, the only condominium building is Monroe Point. And then you've got a lot of voting residents who are in those apartments, and there are several large apartments. Now you have the senior building and you have several new office buildings. So it's, it just may, I mean, think about it. We can all talk about it. But in my mind, it's very different from Cherry Creek East. I mean, it just didn't develop like Cherry Creek East.
Just from an urban planner standpoint, that what you don't want is an island or an orphan. You want a vibrant neighborhood. So the more you bring it together.
Yeah, it's just when you think about a JID, it's different. You can have a neighborhood, but the JID, the money would have to go into that area as well. So you'd have to think about what improvements really are appropriate for Cherry Creek East and Cherry Creek North in throughout the whole neighborhood. Doesn't really seem like it would be the same in the triangle, which doesn't mean that they're an orphan. They could still be a part of the plan. They could still be brought in. But it's just that the JID improvements to me seem like that doesn't really work. And they're two different things, right? How neighborhoods function together, and then how a JID functions and who's going to pay into it and what are their expectations for benefits that they're paying for. So,
Quick question though,
Yeah.
we're talking mill levies and assessments, right?
correct.
Just by looking at just the valuation of some of these properties in there, and versus the size, it would almost seem as if they would be paying more in than the value they would get out, right?
Probably, but why wouldn't then those people vote against it?
Fair.
Because,
Totally fair.
and there's not really, I mean, anyway, though, it's a good point, but when you really think about what the things that we're talking about implementing for improvements, that's where it may seem to me, that you don't want to set this up to fail either. And so, and I do know, because we have talked about this at the smaller group level, that the assessments can be different. Like, clearly the businesses that are paying into the bid are going to be exempted, but there are lots of businesses adjacent to a lot of CMX, a lot of the businesses on 6th. And so then the question is, at a rate that's already high, should we think about different varied mill levies depending on whether it's a residential use or a commercial use? And we can do that, as I understand it. It's just a question again of what are the benefits? What are we really looking to provide? For example, if you think about a shuttle that may go through the neighborhood, I mean, all the businesses would love that, right? Because it brings people to their door. Pedestrian lighting, landscaping also would be improving those areas adjacent to them. Yeah. So if, I mean, when we get into the specifics, I think that some of this will be more clear. Anybody else?
Sorry, I just want to add, Lou, just to comment on your different rates thing. The one thing that Tabor, that kind of all the tax, Tabor stuff doesn't allow us to do is have different mill rates for different uses. So inherently, people are paying different because commercial is assessed 4 times higher than residential is. So that is already sort of baked in that regard, but we can't set different mill levy rates. We can set different zones of assessment where, let's say, we have different layers of service in different zones. So that's just it's a technicality, but it's kind of an important one that I wanted to clarify, that we can't sort out the use and give it a different rate than we can, another. There's different ways to slice and dice how we might provide different layers or levels. And we can look at things beyond a mill levy, like building square footage or lot square footage or things like that. But anyway, those are things we'll get into the weeds on the feasibility analysis too, is all the different ways you can slice and dice the assessment.
Okay, but that becomes important, especially when we think about Cherry Creek West and the mall and, you know, some of those larger uses where rates are already pretty high. And we've asked a lot of Cherry Creek West to put in on some of their project improvements. So the fact, when you're saying you can make a different district part of the JID, can you say that again? And not a varied mill levy based on use, but you can what?
Create different zones is what we would call them, different zones of assessment.
Okay,
So-
so that the mall property could be a different zone of assessment.
Yes.
And can that mill levy be different than the other zones?
Yes.
Okay. So that's how you get to the same place on some of those easily identifiable parts.
Yes, so the statute says, state law says we have to uniformly apply the mill rate to everybody if within a boundary. So that's why I'm saying we can't, if it's industrial versus residential versus commercial versus whatever, we can't create different rates for different people that are effectively getting the same thing. In a zoned approach, we would say, you know, let's say the mall is a zone and then, you know, different neighborhoods are different zones and they're paying different rates collectively because they want a different level of service. Maybe the mall wants full-time 24/7 security patrols, you know, all the time, but the other neighborhoods only want neighborhood patrols on the weekend. So we have to differentiate it in the operating plan by aligning what people are going to get and what they're going to pay, because the statute makes us ensure it's fair, right? And that it's balanced equitably around what's being provided.
Is that how, when you talk about an overlay to the bid, that is that a different zone where you capture the residential versus, okay.
That's correct.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, great. I know this is the beginning of the discussion. If you wouldn't mind, Jamie, sending me those slides that you had tonight, and also the meeting schedule, I think that I saw up there.
Yes.
I know that several of the neighborhoods have already got something on their schedules. We do for May. I think you'll be coming. But it'd be nice to know so that if anybody can't make it to one, they can come to the other, right? So this is where Cherry Creek East and North have worked together so closely for so many years that it'll be nice to have these conversations really blended, because it's you know, you've got to start on us on all that pedestrian lighting, but I think it'll be a really good conversation. Now we can spread that throughout the neighborhood.
And Lou, just so you're aware, our office will be sending, I think, a postcard. We haven't designed it yet, but we're getting there, to every potential elector within the current boundary, to let them know when the meetings are going to be, how they can sign up for them, how they can ask questions. We have a website that is set up. We have an email address that is specific to it's ccjid at denvergov.org/ccjid, or is the website, and ccjid@denvergov.org is the email address. So we've got a lot of different ways that we're currently in the process of setting up. By, you know, next month, we should have those ready to go, and then we'll send that information out so that everyone will get a postcard with those specifics on it as well.
And I will just add, my apologies, when I saved my slide deck, two things disappeared, and one was the list of meetings, and then the other was the website and the email address. So I'm going to incorporate that back in, and Lou, I'll send that to you this evening so you have the slides to distribute.
Perfect. Great. Okay, thank you guys very much. It's really exciting. It's really terrific to think about this as being something that we can control, especially at a time when we don't know how many of the federal dollars that get to the city are going to be gone. So this is something we can't control. So thank you very much. And with that, it's 10 after. Are there any topics that others would like to bring up, talk about, questions?
I have one, but I probably need to talk to Owen.
Oh,
We
okay.
have a real drainage issue in Cherry Creek East.
Yeah.
Some flooded basements and things and, we have new units that are being built that are gonna add to that. And I think you have an email from Phyllis Sinclair. Would really appreciate if you'd follow up with her.
Didn't we just get that storm drainage project done on Ellsworth?
It's working right now.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
It's, so when that comes online, will that help?
That's not gonna help, but our block, because the alley is dumping into garages from the alley. And it's not, that's not part of that drainage system.
Okay.
So we need to address it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll close early. Thank you, everyone. If you've got suggestions, we will continue, obviously, with this really important topic. But if there's anything else, please let me know. We'll add it to the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you all
everybody.
very much.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
So